Halloween feels timeless, as if its traditions were carved in stone thousands of years ago. But what if they weren't? What if the holiday's most iconic elements, from the grinning pumpkin on your porch to the very concept of trick-or-treating, are actually modern inventions, clever marketing schemes, and massive historical misunderstandings? Let's peel back the mask. 1. That yearly ritual of dumping your kid's candy on the table for a forensic-level inspection? It's based on one of Halloween's most successful lies, the anonymous neighborhood villain slipping razor blades and poison into candy. Sociologists have studied this for decades and found the number of verified cases of strangers actually doing this is, you guessed it, 0. The myth was supercharged by media hype and a few isolated incidents that were later revealed to be elaborate hoaxes or family disputes, not random malice. The real threat to your Halloween candy isn't some shadowy figure down the street. It's the parent tax you secretly enforce, ensuring all the best chocolate bars mysteriously disappear before morning. 2. The original jack-o'-lantern wasn't a cheerful pumpkin. It was a turnip, and it looked absolutely terrifying. We picture Halloween with bright orange, grinning gourds, but that's a modern American luxury. The tradition stems from an Irish myth about Stingy Jack, a man doomed to wander in darkness with only a burning coal inside a hollowed-out vegetable for light. When Irish immigrants arrived in America, they discovered that pumpkins were bigger, softer, and far easier to carve than a dense, stubborn root vegetable. The switch wasn't about tradition, it was a pragmatic decision to avoid sore hands and broken knives. Your festive porch decoration is basically a monument to taking the easier option. 3. Go ahead. Try to find an ancient Celtic text that mentions a god of the dead named Samhain. You'll be searching for a while because he never existed. The pervasive myth that Halloween stems from the worship of a dark deity is one of history's most creative misunderstandings. Samhain was simply the name of the Celtic harvest festival itself, marking the end of summer. Believing Samhain was a god is like thinking people in December worship a jolly bearded man named Christmas. The idea was likely invented centuries later by misinformed writers trying to package pagan beliefs into a neat, spooky narrative for their own audiences. 4. Contrary to what every frantic pamphlet from the 1980s told you, Halloween is not the devil's birthday. This lie is a surprisingly modern creation, born from the Satanic Panic era, when people were convinced devil worshippers were hiding around every corner. The ancient Celts celebrating their harvest festival had absolutely no concept of the Christian devil. Linking them to Satan is a historical anachronism, like accusing Julius Caesar of sending angry tweets. The ultimate irony is that the name Halloween itself comes from All Hallows' Eve, the night before the Christian celebration of All Saints' Day. The holiday is literally named after a church event. 5. That familiar chant of "trick or treat" echoing through your neighborhood feels timeless, as if it's been happening for centuries. But this beloved tradition isn't some ancient custom passed down from robed druids. It's actually a 20th century solution to juvenile delinquency. In the early 1900s, Halloween was mostly about pranks and vandalism. To curb the chaos, communities began to endorse a system of going door to door for treats. It was less a celebration of spirits and more a thinly veiled bribe to stop kids from soaping windows and tipping over trash cans. So, at its core, trick-or-treating is just a highly successful community-wide protection racket run by children. 6. That iconic image of the Wicked Witch, green skin, pointy hat, warty nose, is cemented in our minds as historical fact. But this entire aesthetic wasn't born from medieval folklore. It was invented in 1939 for a Hollywood movie. The look was entirely crafted for Margaret Hamilton's portrayal of the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz. The green skin was chosen specifically because it contrasted sharply with the yellow brick road in glorious Technicolor. Historically, accused witches were just regular people, often healers or social outcasts. They were feared for their supposed powers, not their questionable fashion choices or poor skincare. Hollywood effectively rebranded witchcraft for the entire world. 7. The superstition that a black cat crossing your path brings bad luck is so ingrained in Western culture that it feels like a universal truth. It's not. This fear is a holdover from the Middle Ages in Europe, when the church associated them with witches and demons. But in many other cultures, black cats are considered symbols of good fortune. In ancient Egypt, they were revered. In Japan, a black cat is believed to bring a woman many suitors, and in the UK, they're considered a sign of good luck. So, if a black cat walks in front of you on Halloween, it's not cursing you. It's probably just unimpressed with your costume and on its way to find someone who appreciates its elegance. 8. Love it or hate it, candy corn seems like it has existed for as long as Halloween itself. This waxy, tri-colored treat feels like an ancient relic of the candy world. But this timeless classic was actually invented in the 1880s and was originally marketed under a far less appealing name, chicken feed. It was sold in boxes with a rooster on the front and was intended as a year-round treat for a largely rural population. It only became a Halloween staple decades later due to its harvest-like colors. So, when you're eating candy corn, you're not partaking in an ancient tradition. You're enjoying a 19th century marketing gimmick originally named after bird food. 9. That spooky Ouija board you see in every horror movie feels like an ancient mystical artifact, a forbidden portal to the other side. But this tool of the occult wasn't channeled by ancient mystics. It was patented in 1890 by a group of American businessmen. It was designed and sold as a harmless parlor game to capitalize on the spiritualism craze of the Victorian era. It's less of a demonic conduit, and more of a piece of intellectual property once owned by Parker Brothers, the same company that brought you Monopoly. So, the idea that you're communing with ancient demons is a modern invention. You're basically just playing a spooky board game that got really good PR from Hollywood. 10. Squeezing into a superhero costume or a silly inflatable outfit seems like pure, harmless fun. But the original reason for wearing disguises on this night was much darker. The lie is that it was always just for play. The truth is, it was for survival. The Celts believed that on Samhain, the veil between the living and the spirit world was at its thinnest, allowing ghosts and demons to roam the earth. To avoid being recognized and tormented by these malevolent spirits, people would wear costumes and masks to blend in and fool them. So, remember, as you adjust your pirate hat, your ancestors were wearing grotesque animal skins hoping a vengeful ghost wouldn't notice them. 11. The Halloween color palette of orange and black seems elemental, almost instinctual. We're told it's simple. Orange for pumpkins, black for night. This is a trivialization of a much deeper symbolism. For the Celts celebrating Samhain, these colors represented the two fundamental poles of existence at that time of year. Orange signified the warmth, the bounty of the harvest, and the final blaze of life in the autumn leaves. Black, in stark contrast, was the color of winter's onset and the death of the old year. This pairing wasn't a festive decoration choice, it was a profound visual representation of the veil between life and death itself. 12. Bobbing for apples is presented as a wholesome, timeless children's game, a staple of any family-friendly Halloween party. But this seemingly innocent activity has a far stranger and less hygienic past. It began as a British courtship ritual, a form of divination to predict one's future spouse. In one version, the first person to successfully bite an apple would be the next to marry. So it wasn't a fun party game for kids. It was a desperate and soggy attempt for young adults to find a partner by dunking their faces into the same tub of water everyone else had just spit into. It was essentially the 19th century version of a very wet, very unsanitary Tinder. 13. We assume bats became a Halloween icon simply because they're nocturnal, live in caves, and have a bad PR team thanks to vampires. While that helps, the original connection is far more practical. The ancient Celts celebrating Samhain would light enormous bonfires to ward off evil spirits and celebrate the harvest. These massive fires would attract swarms of moths and other insects, which in turn attracted hordes of bats for a feast. The bats weren't there as a spooky omen. They were just taking advantage of an all-you-can-eat bug buffet. Their association with Halloween isn't mystical, it's just good old-fashioned pest control. 14. The quintessential ghost costume, a simple white sheet with eye holes, is perhaps the most enduring symbol of the paranormal. We accept it as an ancient, archetypal representation of a departed soul. The truth, however, is less about folklore and more about 19th century production value. In historical accounts, spirits were said to appear as they did in life, only more translucent or sorrowful. The sheet ghost was largely born from the practical limitations of early theater and the fraudulent spirit photography craze. It was a cheap and unambiguous way to say, this character is dead. So, the most iconic image of a ghost isn't based on supernatural encounters. It's the result of a low budget. 15. Haunted houses feel like a grassroots tradition, something that has always been a part of Halloween. The truth is, the commercial haunted attraction is a surprisingly modern invention, and you can thank, of all people, Walt Disney. While small-scale spook houses existed earlier, it was the opening of Disney's Haunted Mansion in 1969 that proved a high-tech, professionally designed scare experience could be a massive commercial success. This inspired a boom in the 1970s, with organizations like the JCs creating haunted houses for fundraisers, cementing them as a Halloween staple. So, your favorite local haunted house owes less to ancient folklore and more to the business model of Mickey Mouse. 16. The legend surrounding Harry Houdini's death is a cornerstone of Halloween lore. The world's greatest escape artist, killed on October 31st during a stunt gone wrong. It's a perfectly tragic narrative, but it's false. Houdini did die on Halloween of 1926, but not in a water torture cell or a locked trunk. The cause was peritonitis from a ruptured appendix. Days earlier, a student testing Houdini's famed abdominal strength had punched him unexpectedly before he could prepare. While the blows likely exacerbated his condition, he wasn't felled by a feat of magic. The master of illusion died from a very mundane, very human ailment he simply ignored for too long. 17. The full moon rises, a primal howl echoes, and the werewolf is helplessly bound to its lunar fate. This unbreakable link is a foundational rule of monster mythology, but it's largely a cinematic invention. In early folklore, werewolves were far more versatile. Their transformations could be voluntary, triggered by a curse, or even achieved by putting on an enchanted wolf skin. Some legends tied the change to specific dates, like Christmas Eve, not just the full moon. Hollywood streamlined this complex mythology into a single, visually dramatic trigger. The full moon isn't an ancient law of lycanthropy. It's just a convenient and very effective cinematic plot device. 18. It is a truth universally acknowledged that the lumbering, neck-bolted monster is named Frankenstein. This is perhaps the most persistent error in all of literary history. In Mary Shelley's 1818 novel, Victor Frankenstein is the brilliant, arrogant scientist who creates life. His creation, the tragic being at the heart of the story, is never given a name. He is referred to only as the creature, fiend, or wretch. Calling the creation by the creator's name isn't just a simple mistake. It fundamentally misunderstands the novel's core theme about a father abandoning his son. It's literary malpractice that has become accepted fact through a century of film adaptations. 19. The story of Orson Welles' 1938 War of the Worlds radio broadcast is legendary. On the night before Halloween, he supposedly sent the entire nation into a panic, with millions believing a real Martian invasion was underway. While some people were certainly fooled and frightened, the idea of mass hysteria was a massive exaggeration. It was largely a myth created and amplified by newspapers. Jealous of the advertising revenue radio was siphoning away, print media seized the opportunity to portray the new medium as irresponsible and dangerous. The Great Mass Panic story was, in itself, one of the earliest and most successful examples of media-driven fake news. 20. The words "Hocus Pocus" are chanted by witches in movies and have become synonymous with dark magic. they sound like they were pulled from some ancient leather-bound grimoire filled with forbidden spells. The reality is far more comical. The phrase is believed to have originated in the 17th century as stage patter for magicians, likely as a pseudo-Latin nonsense phrase parodying the Catholic Mass. It's the linguistic ancestor of words like abracadabra and voila. So when you hear a witch chant hocus pocus, she isn't invoking ancient demonic forces. She's using the 17th century equivalent of razzle-dazzle. 21. The enduring image of the Salem witch trials is of defendants being burned at the stake, a scene replicated in countless films and stories. This powerful image, however, is a complete historical inaccuracy for the events in Salem. While the accused faced a tragic fate, not a single person was subjected to execution by fire. This widespread myth likely stems from a conflation of the American colonial trials with the much larger European witch hunts, where burning was indeed a common practice. The grim reality of Salem is often misremembered, overshadowed by a more cinematic but false narrative. 22. It's a well-known fact that Bram Stoker's Dracula was based on the real-life Romanian ruler, Vlad the Impaler. This connection is treated as direct inspiration, but the historical link is incredibly thin. Stoker was planning a vampire novel long before he ever heard of Vlad. He stumbled upon the name Dracula in a history book, noted that it meant devil in Wallachian, and thought it sounded menacing. He borrowed the name and a few scant details about battles. But the character of the aristocratic undead count has almost nothing in common with the historical prince. It's less a historical retelling and more a classic case of an author finding a cool name and deciding not to let the facts get in the way of a great story. 23. To many, Mexico's Dia de los Muertos, with its skulls and focus on the deceased, looks like a more elaborate version of Halloween. This comparison is a profound misunderstanding. The lie is that they are spiritual cousins. In reality, their tones are diametrically opposed. Halloween has roots in a tradition of fearing spirits and warding them off. Dia de los Muertos, with its Aztec and Catholic blend, is a joyful celebration meant to welcome the spirits of deceased loved ones back for a brief reunion. It's a vibrant, colorful holiday of remembrance, not fear. Lumping them together is a fundamental misreading of an entire culture's view on life and death. 24. The Headless Horseman is one of the most iconic specters of the season, a figure that feels ripped from the pages of ancient, terrifying European folklore. Except he wasn't. The galloping Hessian of Sleepy Hollow is a purely American invention created by author Washington Irving in his 1820 short story. While Irving was inspired by German folk tales, his horseman is a unique literary creation, a ghost story deliberately crafted to become American mythology. So, one of the most legendary phantoms in Halloween lore isn't an ancient terror from a forgotten age. He's a piece of early American literature who is younger than the U.S. Constitution. 25. Every parent knows the immutable law of Halloween physics. A large quantity of candy will induce a sugar rush, transforming children into hyperactive gremlins. It's a plausible theory, but it has been thoroughly debunked. Numerous, double-blind, controlled studies have found no scientific link between sugar consumption and hyperactivity in children. The effect is largely psychological. Kids are excited because it's a special occasion involving costumes, parties, and staying up late. Parents expect them to be hyper, so they interpret their behavior through that lens. The hyperactivity is real, but the culprit isn't the candy. It's the chaotic joy of Halloween itself. 26. The caramel apple seems like a quintessential autumn treat, a tradition that must stretch back for centuries to some rustic harvest festival. This nostalgic image is a clever piece of modern marketing. The caramel apple was actually invented in the 1950s by a Kraft Foods employee named Dan Walker. He was experimenting with leftover caramels from Halloween sales and simply decided to dip an apple into the melted concoction. It was a hit, and Kraft bought the idea, turning an act of random confectionery experimentation into a beloved multi-generational tradition. It's less folklore and more successful corporate product development. 27. The ritual of chanting Bloody Mary into a mirror is a rite of passage at sleepovers, a dare that supposedly summons a vengeful spirit. The legend feels ancient and deeply rooted in historical tragedy, often linked to Queen Mary I of England. But there is zero historical evidence connecting this folklore to any real monarch or ancient entity. The Bloody Mary game is a 20th century invention, a piece of children's folklore that combines our natural fear of mirrors with the power of suggestion. It's not an ancient summoning rite. It's a testament to how effectively kids can scare themselves in a dark bathroom. 28. The massive bonfires we associate with Halloween feel like a cozy, timeless tradition for community gathering. However, the origin of the name itself points to a much more solemn and powerful purpose. The modern term bonfire is a direct evolution of the ancient bonfire. During the Celtic festival of Samhain, these large sacred fires were central to community rituals. Their primary purpose was not for a party, but for spiritual cleansing and protection. It was believed the flames had purifying properties that would ward off the malevolent spirits thought to roam the earth as the dark winter approached. 29. Finding a spider on Halloween is often seen as a bad omen, a creepy crawler that perfectly fits the night's spooky aesthetic. We associate them with haunted houses and evil. But in old folklore, the opposite was true. A spider discovered in your home on Halloween was believed to be the spirit of a deceased loved one watching over you, offering protection. So, rather than being a sign of impending doom, that spider in the corner was considered a benevolent guardian from the other side. Our modern perception has turned a symbol of protection into a symbol of fear. 30. In many circles, Halloween is seen as a holiday primarily for children, with adults who participate being accused of refusing to grow up. This view is historically short-sighted. The ancient festivals that Halloween evolved from, like Samhain, were community-wide events for all ages, with a strong focus on adult rituals and beliefs. The kids' holiday angle is largely a 20th century phenomenon. The recent surge in adult Halloween celebrations with elaborate costumes, parties, and events isn't a new trend. It's actually a return to the holiday's more inclusive, all-ages roots. 31. It's one of the first things we learn in school. A pumpkin is a vegetable. We carve it, we put it in pies. It seems to fit perfectly alongside carrots and potatoes. But this is a culinary classification, not a botanical one. To a scientist, the pumpkin is unequivocally a fruit. Specifically, it's a type of berry. A fruit is defined as the mature ovary of a flowering plant, enclosing the seed or seeds. By that definition, a pumpkin, with its fleshy interior and abundance of seeds, fits the description perfectly. So the next time you carve your jack-o'-lantern, remember you're not just carving a vegetable, you're sculpting a giant festive berry. 32. That warm, comforting flavor that defines autumn. The pumpkin spice in your latte, your pie, and even your candles, is the taste of pumpkin itself. This is a masterful deception. The flavor you love as pumpkin spice contains no actual pumpkin. It's a specific blend of spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, ginger, and allspice, that were traditionally used to make an otherwise bland pumpkin pie palatable. The pumpkin itself is merely the squashy, flavorless vessel. So when you enjoy that seasonal treat, you're not obsessed with the gourd. You're obsessed with the spice blend that pulled off one of the greatest marketing coups in history. 33. The fake, stretchy spider webs we drape over everything at Halloween seem like a simple, generic, spooky decoration. The lie is that their meaning is only skin deep. The reason spider webs became such a potent symbol of the holiday is because they are a visual shorthand for the passage of time, neglect, and decay. They instantly signify a place that has been abandoned by the living and is therefore ripe for occupation by the dead. A spider web transforms a normal doorway into the entrance of a tomb. It's not just a decoration, it's a powerful, non-verbal cue that you are entering a space where the normal rules of the living world no longer apply. 34. In every Halloween story, the witch has her loyal animal companion, a magical sidekick, often a black cat or an owl, known as a familiar. The modern cuddly version of this relationship is a complete fantasy. During the era of the witch hunts, a familiar was not considered a pet. It was believed to be a demonic spirit in animal form, given to the witch by the devil to act as her spy and servant. It wasn't a cute companion you named Salem. It was a malevolent entity that people believed was nourished by the witch's own blood. The entire concept was built not on companionship, but on demonic servitude. 35. When you think of Halloween colors, orange and black immediately come to mind. But in recent decades, purple and green have become just as integral to the holiday's palette. This wasn't an ancient development, it was a 20th century commercial evolution. The spooky green was popularized by the cinematic depictions of witches and Frankenstein's monster, while purple became associated with the mystical and the supernatural, a slightly more magical and less grim alternative to black. These colors weren't pulled from ancient folklore. They were largely adopted from classic horror movies, comic books, and Halloween product marketing. 36. The Curse of the Pharaohs is a tale of supernatural retribution, where archaeologists who disturbed King Tut's tomb were struck down by an ancient hex. This narrative is pure fiction, a masterpiece of media sensationalism. When the tomb was opened in 1922, the expedition's financier, Lord Carnarvon, died months later from an infected mosquito bite. A clever newspaper, desperate for a scoop, invented the curse to sell papers, and from there, every subsequent death even remotely related to the team was attributed to it. There was no ancient curse inscribed on the walls. There was just a series of unfortunate, explainable events amplified by early 20th century yellow journalism. 37. It's a rule as old as ghost stories themselves. When a spirit wants to scare you, it says, "Boo." We accept this as a universal spectral language, but the word has no ancient or paranormal origins. Boo is a relatively modern exclamation. It likely derives from an Old English word meant to create a loud, sudden sound to startle someone. It was never the official word of the undead. Ghosts in folklore were more likely to moan, shriek, or rattle chains. The idea of them politely saying boo is a nursery rhyme simplification, making the afterlife's inhabitants sound less like terrifying specters and more like participants in a very simple game of peekaboo. 38. We picture the Victorians as a prim and repressed people, their Halloween celebrations surely being somber and restrained. This could not be further from the truth. Victorian Halloween was a night of intense, often bizarre, romantic fortune-telling. Young people performed elaborate rituals to divine the identity of their future spouse. These included peeling an apple in one continuous strip and throwing it over their shoulder to see what initial it formed, or staring into a mirror by candlelight, hoping to see their soulmate's face appear. It was less about ghosts and more about a desperate, superstitious form of 19th century speed dating. 39. Ask someone to name the first horror movie, and they'll likely point to a 1920s classic like Nosferatu or The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. The lie is that cinematic horror is a product of that expressionist era. In reality, filmmakers wanted to scare audiences from the moment they got their hands on a camera. The first identifiable horror film is a 3-minute French short from 1896 called Le Manoir du Diable, The House of the Devil. Created by illusionist Georges Méliès, it features a bat transforming into Mephistopheles, conjuring demons, ghosts, and witches. It proves that the desire to create nightmares on screen isn't a modern invention. It's as old as cinema itself. 40. A pervasive modern myth is that Halloween is the single most dangerous night of the year for children, primarily due to the threat of abduction by strangers. While parents should always be cautious, statistics consistently show this fear is wildly overblown. The actual, most significant danger to children on Halloween is not a villain in a mask, but a car. Pedestrian accidents involving children spike dramatically on this night due to a combination of darkness, excitement, and costumes that can impair vision. The real monsters aren't lurking in the shadows. They're the everyday, preventable dangers we often overlook in favor of more cinematic fears. So, the jack-o'-lantern is a lie, trick-or-treating is a lie, even the witch's green skin is a lie. Here's the real challenge. Write one sentence in the comments defending why Halloween is still a meaningful holiday after all this. If you enjoy destroying comfortable myths, prove it by hitting that like button and subscribe for your next dose of reality.